Welcome into Northside Territory, Foul Territory Network's Cubs podcast. I'm Sahadev Sharma with my partner, Patrick Mooney. Patrick, part two of a Thanksgiving mailbag. The North Side sickos came out in force.
Our
I sent
people.
out, yeah, I sent out the request for questions, and you sickos delivered. We love you. Thanks so much. We appreciate you guys reaching out and making sure to have your voice heard. Let's get right into it, Patrick. Let's find out what the fans want to know about. Kevin McNamee has a question. Assuming the Cubs aren't pursuing top free agents, yes, that's a good assumption. will they instead be looking to acquire all-star level talent via trade? What do you think, Patrick?
No doubt. And I think, Sahadev, you had a couple ideas, like in terms of pitching, right? Maybe certain teams that match up, or
I think Seattle makes a ton of sense. I mean, we're just going to hammer that until a deal is made, or they make a trade, or they add a pitcher. I think that makes a lot of sense. That they have pitching talent. They're looking for bats. They're like, I think it's out there. They specifically want like middle infield athleticism. Like the Cubs have that, even if it's not Nico Horner. Like, talk about any of their, like, a lot, like James Triantos fits that as well, right? I think there's some obvious matchup there, and then you just continue to, like, do they continue to talk to Cleveland? Like, do they, like, what is all-star level talent as well? Like, Toronto's not moving Vlad Jr., but is there a name, is there a bat out there that we're not aware of, right? That possibly potentially could be moved. Is that something the Cubs would look into? I think they will absolutely be looking to try and upgrade in different areas. Catcher is the spot that we talked about over the summer. We brought it up during the offseason. I just don't know how it happens. I don't think you can get an all-star level catcher outside of developing your own when they rarely hit free agent market, or trading for a prospect somehow. Like William. That's how William Contreras was acquired. That's how Logan O'Hoppe was acquired. And I'm sure if I think more, there's probably a few more. That's how these guys are acquired. They're as prospects, or you develop them.
I mean, I guess technically Jordan Montgomery has never been an all-star, but he's been a World Series pitcher. The Diamondbacks have a lot of rotation pieces they be looking to move. And I would also say too, like, the Cubs have put themselves in this position. You've seen the trades with Tampa before. Teams like Minnesota that are up for sale, or that have been dealing with this TV revenue crunch. Like they're probably teams we're not like thinking of because they're not as like interesting. But their financial flexibility is not as much as Cubs fans would hope this offseason, but it's probably a lot more than a significant group of their competitors. And like, if you have some money you can use, you have some prospects, you should probably start moving. This is the offseason for it.
Yes. I love the Jordan Montgomery idea. I actually looked that up. There was a question specifically about him. I didn't include it, but someone specifically asked, would the Cubs pursue him? And I looked up his contract. There's only 1 year left.
And they liked him as a free agent the prior winter. Yeah.
Well, I don't know why I thought there was more on that. I think that makes a lot of sense if the Diamondbacks are looking to move him. I mean, he makes a ton of sense. I love the Minnesota idea. They have a lot of offensive talent that gets hurt a lot, right? So it's the type of guy that they have guys that it's like, well, do you want to take this risk? Maybe the Cubs are like the team that needs to take the risk right now, if in the injury risk, if they're not going to take the financial risk, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that who's Minnesota willing to move would be my question, and then beyond that, like what does it cost, right? Speaking of cost, Matthew Friedman wants to know, is there any chance of PCA getting a Jackson Churio like extension? I think I should have edited that. Jackson Churio. I apologize for spelling your last name wrong.
I think he had I think PCA is represented by CA, which I think did the Corbin Carroll deal, which would be one template, but I'll let you run with this one, Sahadev.
Yeah. So is there chatter? I haven't heard it. Jackson Churio got 8 years, 82. I just looked this up. 8 years, 82 million, including so come on. I mean, that's very little money for a guy that turned into, like, by the end of the season was like, wait a second, do they have a superstar now? That's how good he was the last couple of months of the season. They're like, this could be a whole other episode. Honestly, Milwaukee's offensive season was really fascinating about how they never really hit like an extended skid, despite like their players being really up and down, because someone seemed to step up the moment someone else went in a slump or got hurt. Like Christian Yelich was playing like the superstar he was. His back went out. And then Jackson Churio is like, oh, yeah, I'm going to develop into the superstar you need. It just like amazing how it all timed out for them. Really, really interesting kind of like up and down season for their offense. But PCA didn't have that level of production. But with his defense, you know, he's certainly an intriguing player. Here's my thing when I think about this, when fans wonder why don't the Cubs sign deals like this. So the players and the representatives, they know what team they're playing for and what team they're negotiating with, right? So Jackson Churio comes up in the Brewers organization, understands what it's like to be in the Brewers organization, is happy, likes it there, and says, I'm willing to sign this deal because I know Milwaukee will treat me well, and they're not going to be able to give me the type of free agent deal that I may demand in 6 years. PCA and his representatives probably are like, the Cubs can afford to give me the big money. Why don't I wait for free agency or try and get a much bigger deal in security right now? Will this be some huge deal if they even get to talking about this? I just like, players are hesitant to give teams like the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Cubs, the Mets, the Red Sox, these types of discount extensions, right? It doesn't happen as often. Like Ian Happ probably felt he took a discount and he got a no trade clause, right? Nico Horner's not a home run hitter. He's not like this sexy player that would make bank in free agency. They both love Chicago. I think both of them either like met. I think Ian Happ met his wife in Chicago, and she's from the area. And then I know Nico Horner's fiance, girlfriend, works in Chicago and is kind of anchored here. Like they both want to be here, you know, for reasons beyond baseball, and they love the organization and the team. PCA, maybe when I talked about how Nico probably isn't the sexiest of free agents, I think PCA, yeah, is he going to hit you 30, 40 homers? No, but you know, how many elite center fielders that can play, you know, plus offense, if that's who he is offensively, right? We don't know yet, which is why you take the risk now. If you can extend him, you take the risk now. Like there's the balancing, right? Like the Cubs have to take a risk and PCA is taking a risk. They're both taking risks, but they end up in a happy place where he signs a team-friendly extension and he gets security, right? But very, very rarely does that type of talent hit the free agent market if he's really a plus offensive player.
Plus, PCA is already under a long-term structure, and my thinking on this changed. Jeff Berry, the former CAA baseball agent, was on the Main Foul Territory show this past season and really kind of hammered the point of some of these extensions just kind of are front offices trying to like look good, or, you know, the surplus value illusion. Like, he's under club control through 2030. Like, go out and prove it. Like, the Cubs don't need to like worry about whether or not they can afford PCA in the future. Of course they can. And Corbin Carroll did not have the same type of year this year. And so it's worth listening to hear Jeff Berry after he kind of exited the agency business. I think he's now an advisor to Buster Posey in San Francisco because he had represented the longtime Giants catcher. And it's like, what's the rush? I mean, I know this is a big thing, Cleveland did it, way back in the day, and it was kind of ahead of its time. But now it's like, go out and prove it. Be a great player. And then, see where he's at. Like, I think we'll get into this too with Justin Steele at some point too. Like, it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. But in general, these big market teams, unless it's, something the player pushes for and really makes a ton of sense, like, there's no need to force it in my opinion.
Right. I think it's more important for the small market teams to get it done, right? Like, locking up Jackson Chourio is really important for the Brewers. The counter, I think, that fans would make is, well, the Cubs are acting like a small market team, so that's maybe they need to behave in a small market manner with these things. I'm not sure. I see your point, and I kind of agree with it. Like, act like a big market team and see if he's worth the extension. Like, give it one more year, and maybe one more year doesn't see the price go up insanely. But if you can see him at least say, like, okay, there's more he can do, and he was an league average for a full season offensive player, and you see like a potential for improvement. Okay, now I'd be like, okay, now let's talk about it. But yes, I think this is a good question and a fair question, and one, I think it's important to see if they start doing it with any of these younger guys to avoid what happened last time, where they're all coming up at the same time and they're all exiting at the same time.
Yeah, that's true.
The counter to that then is, well, what if they don't extend them and Jed starts trading them at 3 years in, 4 years in, things like that, to kind of reset clocks and get prospects. And well, that'll be a whole other segment in a very angry podcast. I'd assume fans would not be happy if they finally start winning and they're trading established players. But that's I don't need to predict anger.
Yes, way down the
road.
We
have enough now. Yeah. All right. You want to read this next one, Patrick?
All right, Strand 34. Have you heard any leanings on the Cubs' expectations for bringing up Matt Shaw this season? If he had a crazy spring, any chance he makes opening day?
I think because of the new rules and the chance to make if he wins Rookie of the Year or finishes top 3 in MVP voting or gets top 3 MVP votes, something like that. I can't remember the exact. I think it's finished top 3 in MVP, and you have to win Rookie of the Year, not get Rookie of the Year votes. Then the team gets a draft pick. Right, and that they have to be up there for the beginning of the season. Pirates don't get a draft pick for Paul Skeens winning Rookie of the Year because they waited 20 days, and that that completely changes everything about his outlook and his contract situation, right? So yes, I think there is a chance for this, depending on the moves we see this winter. And what type of spring Shaw has, what openings there are. If Nico Hoerner isn't ready to start the season, I'd be surprised if they call up Shaw if it's like a 2-week thing for Nico Hoerner. If Nico Hoerner's traded and they don't sign a stopgap second baseman, or they sign a what's essentially a backup second baseman, and they want Matt Shaw there, yeah, I could see this happening. And I don't think it's going to be because he had a crazy spring or anything like that. It's going to be because they feel like he's ready, and AAA won't have any significant development needs for him. It won't meet any of these significant needs he has. I know he's had some good plays that made highlights, a defense that were making the rounds on Twitter. I haven't heard anything that makes me think he's a good defender at third base yet.
Okay.
I haven't heard it yet. Now, is he bad there? Is he a mess? I think I've heard some of that from other people. I don't think the organization feels like it's a mess there. I do think he's a solid second baseman. Nico Horner's a special second baseman, so it would be a downgrade defensively there. But what he's done, like this type of stuff that he does repeatedly during the minor league season, and then this tournament that he was just in, it's impressive stuff. And I don't think it's the type of stuff that you just kind of like ignore and say like, well, he's just a prospect, I'm not interested. I think he's a really good prospect, and I think he's emerged as their top prospect. And when that's the case, and you're trying to win, anything is possible as far as opening day. Does he give them the best chance to win? I don't think and the reality that he has a chance to win Rookie of the Year, he's that type of prospect. Then you add that into their decision making, because it could get them a draft pick. And years ago I would have said no, right? Because we all know how front offices think, and this is not a front office that's like, oh, it's worth the chance to win a couple more games, because that's not how they look at it, because they don't believe there's that much of a difference as far as the wins it'll add for 15 days or whatever it is.
I mean, couldn't it just be as simple as he has a normal offseason, looks pretty good, and Nico's not ready yet?
Yeah. My only question to that is, would they do that for 2 weeks of
Okay,
Nico
gotcha.
being out?
Yeah.
Right. I don't, and I don't know. We haven't gotten that far along in the process to actually talk like this.
They probably don't know, right?
Yeah.
It depends on how the offseason unfolds.
Right. I think we need to see more, but I think, yes. Is there a chance? I think there is. I think there is a chance. We need to see how this offseason plays out in multiple ways, right? Not just like, there's so many little things that we need to see happen. But Matt Shaw is that type of talent. He's really good, and I think he's going to hit at the highest level. I don't know if he's that superstar bat that everyone's pining for, but he's a good ball player. I think that he's shown that much in his pro career. What does the Yusei Kikuchi contract with the Angels mean for that level of the pitching market? The Athletics' Tim Britton nailed it at 363, so maybe not much. Any intel that the Cubs were in on him? I don't know if the Cubs made an offer. I know the Cubs were interested. That's the level that they were looking at as far as that tier of the pitching market. They were looking for pitchers with no qualifying offer attached to them. He fits the mold. He fit the mold of what they're looking for. Yeah, like 3-year deal. Yeah, like I think the Cubs are looking for something in that range. Veteran that they trust can be in the middle of their rotation, give them 150, 160 innings. Yeah, I think that's what they're looking for. Someone that may be about to hit the best part of their career, even though he's in his mid-30s. All of it added up to making sense to me. I don't know if they offered anything, or whether if it was competitive. If they did offer something, all I know is that he fits the mold. What does it mean for that market? I think it's kind of what they expected. I don't think it. I think they were they were expecting, if they were going to go shopping in free agency there, it was going to be in the 20-25 million per, and in the 2-3-4 year range, because those are the players that they're looking at, right? Like, Evaldi's probably going to get 2. Maybe someone push it. Maybe if the market's robust enough for him, it pushes to 3. But my guess is he gets around 2 and a little more AAV because of his history, and especially because he's a playoff performer too, because the teams will pay a little more for that, I bet.
Yeah, I'm looking at this deal of like, okay, if the Angels jump out and sign someone, with all due respect to Kyle Hendricks, like, don't the Angels do this? Like, they kind of jump out, sign a guy, and was like, oh wow, and then like you never hear from them again. Like, where are the Angels' playoff appearances? This is also a pitcher who, I mean, I remember at the trade deadline, it was, oh my God, I can't believe the Astros. I mean, they gave up all this stuff, and, Toronto's just going to be, win this deal. And the guy gets hot, has a couple good months, and all of a sudden, it's a 3-63 deal. That, to me, just kind of looking at his overall body of work, does not scream Cubs target. I mean, Jameson Taillon, for example, had a very long, steady track record, right? And got a deal, a little longer, a little more money. But like, he had proven his durability, his consistency. This guy was kind of a disappointment in Seattle. He was pretty good in Toronto at times and wasn't pitching as well. And obviously in Houston, rediscovered himself. He's going to be 34 next year. What struck me when we talked last week, Sahadev, was I think the way he framed it was the Cubs need to dig in on him a little more and do a little more research, which to me sounded like, okay, yeah, he's on the radar, but was never really like the priority.
Right.
And by the time they get around to it, the Angels swoop in with, as the only team that's really kind of doing stuff actively on several fronts right now. So,
and you know what? And I don't know enough about the Angels to go too far on this, but they're also a team in a front office that needs to do a little bit of PR with their fan base, right?
Yeah.
Like they need to do stuff like this.
Yeah.
They can't stop now. They've done all this now. And now my question is, where's your superstar? If Mike Trout isn't healthy, right? Like, I guess if Mike Trout's healthy, it's interesting enough, but that's for an Angels podcast and their fans to dwell, I suppose. I think this question is kind of spinning things positively, and I think it's worth talking about, because I think there are so much of what we talk about sometimes is negative. And this question from Staple Gunner he had a couple questions, including like a fair question, in my opinion, of like, why are we talking about the offense? Like, they should be focusing on pitching. All their talent coming through the system is offense. I think it's a valid question, because I think the Cubs are almost doing that, right? They are focusing on pitching, even though I think it's important for them to find a way to make sure that the offense is a little more stable. But here's his question: would you rather have Isaac Paredes as is, or Alex Bregman on MLB Trade Rumors 7-year, $182 million deal? And if it's close, should the front office get credit for essentially getting a top 5 free agent on the cheap? Look, his 2 months with the Cubs is going to cloud fans' opinion on him. It just is. Okay. I think it's really hard for us to ignore what we saw, whether we're fans, media, whatever it is. What I do is I try and look back at the history of the player. I try not to judge him on the 2 months we saw. Like, it's very easy to get carried away with what Nick Castellanos did with the Cubs for 2 months, and it's very easy to get carried away with what Isaac Paredes did for 2 months. Did the Rays see something? Very well possible that they were like, he's peaked. I don't think he's as bad as he was with the Cubs, though. I'm not sure if he's like a 150 weighted runs created plus guy like he was the first 2 months of the season. I think he is what he is, which is around a 125 weighted runs created plus. I think his offense his power output is gonna dip a little, but not to the point where it's like, non-existent like it was at Wrigley the 2 months that he played there. And it wasn't because of the wind. It just wasn't. There were no all these fly balls to the warning track that we saw. We didn't see that with him. That wasn't his problem. He just wasn't comfortable and wasn't swinging the bat well. My question will be, how does he look come spring training? How is he feeling come spring training? Is he healthy? Is he mentally where he wants to be and where the team needs him to be? I'm not saying he wasn't putting in the work or doing what needed to be done. I'm just saying getting traded in a very comfortable situation, from a very comfortable situation to an unfamiliar situation in the middle of the season is never easy. And I think there were human elements that impacted his second half, along with just the randomness of baseball. He was a good player on the road. Do they get credit for this? Look, I thought it was a good trade at the time. And I think, we'll see what Ty Johnson turns into. We'll see if Christopher Morel is better next season. We'll see if Hunter Biggie's a great reliever. I don't think you worry about those things. I saw a great point made on Twitter. Go look at all the trades they've made over the last few months, over the last year and a half. And all the players that they got, that they traded, a lot of them were from the draft.
Yeah,
and many of them were from like the 3rd, 4th, 5th round on, 10th round, 11th round, 12th round. That didn't happen before. That did not happen. That was a big issue. Why couldn't they be in on Paul Goldschmidt? Why couldn't they be in on really Nolan Arenado unless they were trading Chris Bryant? They had no prospects to trade. Nobody wanted their depth pieces because they weren't interesting. Right now, they do have those guys. They have guys that people are interested in that they've drafted in the 5th round, in the 10th round, in the 12th round. That I think is a good sign for the way things are going. Isaac Paredes needs to perform. That contract, yes, I would not. That projection for Alex Bregman. If you're comparing those two, I say take Paredes in the trade. That's my personal opinion. Maybe Bregman will prove me wrong and go on to put up, multiple more all-star MVP caliber seasons, and Paredes is on the downswing at 20 something. But that would be a misevaluation, I guess, on their part.
I mean, one thing I will say, obviously, that farm system, by 2019 heading into 2020 was one of the worst in the game, but they did use guys they drafted to get Nick Castellanos, to get Cole Hamels. Like, they used those pieces. And the big thing there was, like, those guys performed at Wrigley. They were dudes. They, captivated fans. They brought a lot of energy. They, Cole Hamels kind of rejuvenated his career. Like, he looked almost done. He made, made a lot more money off of that. Nick Castellanos obviously caught fire in Chicago. So, like, Paredes if he's the player the Cubs think he is, it's fine. I think it's just the issue of, like, there's going to be a lot more chances for Bregman for that contract to look bad, right? Because it's just longer. Paredes has this window here where he has to be, an everyday above average third baseman for the Cubs, offensive impact and to clean up the defense too. We realized he wasn't going to be, Nolan Arenado over there or like Brooks Robinson, but there was a lot of, like, really, like, what's going on here?
It was worse than it had looked when he was with the Rays. I also think, I think Paredes is a placeholder in the sense, like, he's a potentially impactful placeholder, but I don't think he's going to be with the Cubs for the next 6 years. They're not looking to extend him, right? Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked if Cam Smith has, like, this awesome season. If the Cubs are looking to trade Paredes in a year and a half or something like that. I have no information on that. I haven't heard them say that, but that's how this front office is going to look to roll, right? If you have a guy that can take over, like, there's a reason Nico Horner we're hearing Nico Horner's name on the trade market, right? Because they have a guy that they think can maybe impact the team and they can do different things now. And that's how it's going to be going forward. I think with this front office, they'll look to make moves with established players or prospects, depending on what type of moves where they are in their contention cycle and what they're trying to do. What's the goal, right? It's like we talked about with when we wrote the big story. It's like the model doesn't dictate strategy, right? The model may give you value, but now you see what the value is. Okay, we all agree. We agree with the model. This is the value. Okay, what's the strategy? How do we maximize that value? That's kind of how I think you should look at all of these players. And Paredes, I don't think is like a lifetime Cub. Don't expect him to be around forever. But yes, I think yes, they deserve some credit if he turns out to be the type of player he has been for the last few years, because that's good value. That's the type of player you should be aggressively pursuing when those opportunities arise. All right, thanks so much for listening. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. This is Northside Territory. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe on the YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to The Athletic, where Patrick and I are writing all your Cubs news and information. Thanks for listening, everyone.